Hello everyone. In the past week, we really had a lot of questions about the application of the SFDR and what fund managers have to do in order to comply with it. And there were so many uncertainties that I thought to record a couple of short videos of how the SFDR applies to fund managers, but also how to resolve certain practical issues. One of the first things that we also saw in the joint committee letter sent last week was that it is not clear whether the SFDR applies to small AFMs. And I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you on this. In the first place, it is really not clear whether this initiative applies to small AFMs, as in the scope of the SFDR, it is written that it applies to all alternative investment fund managers. However, it has not been specified whether this is applying to authorized AFMs or to registered AFMs. So looking at the AFMD definition to which this definition refers to, there is no specification either whether it applies to small or full AFMs. So looking from this perspective, it should be concluded that from a material scope standpoint, the initiative would apply to small AFMs. However, if we look into the scope, we also see that ÖSEF managers and ÖVK managers are being mentioned. And these type of managers can be both authorized or registered. So making this really specific mention to ÖSEF managers and ÖVK managers, which are per definition small AFMs, it would need to be concluded on the basis of this that it is not the intention of the European legislator to apply the SFDR to small AFMs. But it's not really clear. So looking at the initiative itself and its provision, then it is already clear that a certain amount of obligations are not applicable to small AFMs per se. For instance, one of the obligations to the alternative investment funds itself is that you would need to publish certain information into your Article 23 disclosure. But Article 23 AFMD is not applicable to AIFs which are managed by small AFMs. Furthermore, the periodic disclosure article refers to the annual report, which is Article 22 of the AFMD. And by definition, Article 22 AFMD is also not applying to small AFMs. So we can already say with a certain degree of clarity that at least these two obligations do not apply. However, to funds there are also applying a number of other obligations, such as the obligations to publish information regarding the fund on the website. So this is not clear whether it applies or not. It seems not to have been the intention to apply, but it could apply. Another thing in this domain is marketing communications. Would we need to comply with marketing communications or not? On the fund level domain, all certain degree of obligations are also applying. The first thing is, for instance, the remuneration policy. However, small AFMs are not obliged to comply with the remuneration policy as set out in the AFMD and the ESMA guidelines. Furthermore, the PI statement is on a comply or explain basis for managers which have less than 500 employees on a group-wide basis. So in any case, whether it would apply or not, they could decide to explain why not to apply it at all. Another obligation is that they would need to implement sustainability risks into their investment decision-making procedure. However, based upon all the other obligations on the product level not being applicable with a certain degree of certainty, it is hardly to be argued that this would be applicable either. So from this little video, it's very clear that some clarifications are needed. By definition, all member states individually may decide what applies to small AFMs or not. Some apply a large amount of provisions from the AFMD to be applicable, whereas others almost do not apply any articles, so it really remains to be seen what national legislators and the European legislator will do with this topic. Having said that, thank you for watching and hope to see you next time. Bye.